When we think about how we create content now, we create it, it probably goes into a repository or a database or something, and especially with data, it goes into a database. And it sits there until it gets called by something. So the actual definition of kinesis is something that moves in response to a stimulus. So when you think about it, our content is kinetic, or our data is kinetic. Well, they're both kinetic, and that you create it, it sits in a repository somewhere, and maybe it's within a CMS or maybe it's external to the CMS, and then it gets called. So it gets called to go on the website, into the mobile app, into a kiosk, into a something. And so that is kinetic content. And so instead of trying to repurpose something like agile, which already has an association with, an agile methodology for software development, we wanted a word that reflected what the challenge that we have with content now in this more sophisticated way of talking about content. And then it had to reflect what content needs to do. And I keep saying content, but it could be content or data, is that it needs to be able to be called in response to something. So an external stimulus says, like, I need this piece of content or data or both, and then it appears where it needs to appear. So to me, that is kinesis. So that's where we came up with kinetic information. So I'm using the word information to mean content and data and all the surrounding bits that need to get delivered. I came upon this term actually by accident because I was making a presentation to potential clients somewhere, and I needed like an acronym. So it was like PICK, right? So you need it has to be intelligent and needs context, and then kinetic. And then that was the one thing where the guy went, oh, that sounds really interesting. Tell me more. And I realized I was onto something. So I've just kind of repurpose that to say this is really what it's about. And when you think about it, everybody that works for a mid to large size organization is going to have this challenge. Even sometimes if you work for a smaller organization, you need it on your website, you need it in your product description, you need it in your, I don't know, return policies. Like there's so many places where content needs to go and go reliably, and go, like, you want it to be automated because you're not going to be copying and pasting all day long. And so how do you achieve that? And depending on many of your different contexts and situations, it could be very different ecosystems, but it's no longer just kind of a system and then it happens. It's usually a bunch of pieces of software that kind of come together and it goes through these travels. And how do you create your content at the front end to make sure that can happen to it?
I'll add a little bit of backstory to that as well, that Rahel and I have had some really good knockdown dragouts about data, information, knowledge, wisdom, the whole pyramid thing. And one of the heritages we've got here is the old Information 4.0, which was an outgrowth of, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Industry 4.0 movement in Europe. That was one of the original, and Rahel can talk, she knows that story way better. But also I work in the field of knowledge representation. I know there's a lot of people in knowledge management here. And so I think kinetic was a good word because it could span all of those. And whether we're talking about content, information, data, knowledge, I don't know, it's the tragic irony to me of our profession is that we're the word people, the meaning people, and we can't sort out our lingo. But maybe that's something we can tackle here.